On several of our adventures together, you have seen me stay in a Walt Disney World theme park after the official closing, and I've gotten the question several times, Michael, how do you do that? The answer is you just kind of stay and enjoy, but today we're taking a deeper dive and looking at some tactics for how you might want to stay and what you can do after the park closes. When I've stayed inside the Magic Kingdom or Epcot after closing, usually you'll see me walking around taking long exposure pictures. For me, I absolutely love how these turn out. The reason I love these shots so much is because you can see all of the detail at night and there are no crowds around. To me, this really captures the magic in a whole new way. Sometimes I capture a landmark like Cinderella Castle or Spaceship Earth or something else around Walt Disney World, and other times I will actually put myself in the shot. It takes a little while and some practice to stand totally still for about 8 to 10 seconds, but the pictures come out extremely well. So how does it work? How do you stay later at a Disney park? Once the park officially closes, there's an announcement where the announcer will say, the park is officially closed. Thanks for joining us. Have a safe journey home. And then you can just stay. Once the park officially closes, you don't have to be in any specific location. You can be anywhere in the park or even in line for your favorite ride. And if you're in line when the park closes, they will honor your spot in line and you'll have the opportunity to ride that ride once, and then they will close the ride after everyone in queue has had a turn. That leads me to one of the most popular tips for staying later in the park, and that's going on one of your favorite, very popular attraction inside the park just before closing. So let's say you go on Space Mountain, you stand in line 3 minutes before the park closes, and it's a 90-minute wait. That means when you get out of the ride, you will be in the park well after 90 minutes after the park closes. The moment the park closes, all of the ride queues will close, so make sure you are in line for your favorite attraction before the park closes. As soon as the park closes and you hear that announcement, most guests will make their way out of the park, and then after 5 or 10 minutes, you'll have most areas to yourself. If you're looking for those great long exposure pictures, take advantage of the time when all of the guests have made their way out and before security starts coming around, putting those rope lines up. The rope lines are put up by Disney security between 30 minutes and an hour after park closing, depending on the time of year, and you'll see them put the rope lines up as soon as you cross a certain boundary line. So if you're leaving Tomorrowland, if you're the very last person out, maybe it's an hour after closing, there'll likely be a security guard behind you, a little ways back, but behind you, and as soon as you cross a certain point, they're going to put a rope extension out and you won't be able to cross back. If you're only in the park between 30 and 45 minutes after closing, you probably won't see any of those rope lines put up. However, if you're one of the last guests in an area, you will start to see Disney security or management kind of hanging around you. It is true that Disney security and management will not ask you to leave if it's only an hour, maybe hour and a half before the park closing, even if you're the last guest in an area. But that being said, as the night continues to progress, you'll see more and more management and security kind of start to create kind of a human shield to prevent you from going deeper into the park. You'll be making your way toward the exit. They'll start to follow you at a distance. They will give you plenty of space, but they'll start to kind of follow you just a little bit, kind of herding you toward the exit. It's a very interesting experience if you're the very last person in the park, and this actually happened to me when I went to Disneyland. I didn't realize how late it was, but the Disney security and management was kind of making a line on Main Street USA, and they were walking down, and I would take 2 steps down Main Street, and they would take 2 steps. It was so funny to see it happen. I felt so bad because I thought I was the last guest to leave. Luckily, I was not. There was another group that was nearby. I felt terrible because I don't want to keep the cast members waiting because they're trying to go home too, but they will continue to kind of herd you out and make your way toward the exit.
You know you're going to miss Disney when you're the last person next to the castle besides security.
On that note, with great power comes great responsibility, so don't forget cast members are people too. They have worked so hard throughout the day to create magical experiences for us. I personally would feel guilty if I kept them from their friends and family and their home life and getting back home in the evening, so I make it a point not to be the very last person out of the park, and I think it's important not to keep them extra late if possible. Another good tactic for staying later in the park is to get a dining reservation about an hour, maybe even half an hour before the parks close. Depending on the time of year and the restaurant, several restaurants around Walt Disney World will seat guests an hour or even half an hour before the park closes. And you'll be at your table for at least an hour, maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours. So that means you'll be in the park extra late, and that is totally allowed. Along with some of the restaurants, many of the shops on Main Street USA will remain open up to an hour after park closing and continue to serve guests. So if you're looking for something to do in the evening, Main Street USA shopping. These tactics are super helpful, especially if you're relatively new to closing the parks. You may be a little bit more comfortable with staying in a restaurant or going to a shop or staying in line for a ride, but you may have noticed I don't usually use those tactics. The reason is because as soon as you leave that restaurant in the evening, it's an hour, maybe an hour and a half after the official closing, and those rope barriers are up, and that kind of disturbs the picture. I love to prioritize those long exposure pictures, so for me, just staying in the park and just waiting for the closing to happen, seeing all the guests leave, setting up my camera and starting to take pictures is a better use of my time. It may not be the same for you, but that's just the reason that I do not stay in a restaurant or go to a ride right after closing, so that I can take full advantage of every moment. That is how you close a Disney park. I definitely recommend it at least once. It's a fun experience, and in the Magic Kingdom you can see the Kiss Goodnight, which is kind of a small projection show on Cinderella Castle. It's a great way to end the night. So have you ever tried closing a Disney park before? What did you think? What do you like to prioritize? Is it pictures like me, or dining, or your favorite attraction just one more time? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for being a part of the magic with me. Until next time, have a magical day.